Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
We're very, very pleased to be joined by Rodger Coleman for our three-way VC discussion about some music. And just to say, I kind of came across Rodger way before the VC, actually, through his excellent blog called Nuvoid, which is still up, Nuvoid. Still up there, Rodger, isn't it? You haven't taken it down or anything silly like that.
It's still there. I haven't added anything since.
It's well worth it. And particularly, I mean, when I alighted upon it, I thought this is somebody who really knows his stuff. And also particularly the kind of what became the Sun Ra Sundays, where Rodger would just completely do a wonderful kind of analysis of Sun Ra tracks, was just really great. And then to see him reappear on the VC was fantastic, actually. So we're delighted to have you with us, Rodger.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor. I've always said to myself, oh, wouldn't it be fun to be able to go to one of these listening sessions with you guys? And I guess this is about as close as we're going to get to that.
Until we rejoin the real world,
yeah.
So what we're going to do is we each got 7 records,
Mm-hmm.
and or CDs, and a couple of books if necessary. I'm just going to talk about them. And they're things that we've been listening to during the lockdown. So it's not necessarily new stuff. It can be anything really, just things that have been coming up. And I'm going to kick off, actually, show the first record. And this is something that links to both Mark and Rodger, actually, which is the latest Jeff Parker album, which is called Suite for Max Brown. And Rodger showed this at his last but one video. And Mark showed the previous one, I think, at the last video as well. And I have to say, this is just a great record. Jeff Parker, guitarist from Tortoise, kind of mainstay of the Chicago scene, actually. Not played with a whole range of different people. I just think this is a great record, actually. I just really think it's fantastic. Kind of almost like a cut above what else is around at the moment. Just really interesting use of sampling, some great playing on it as well, but not flashy playing at all. I mean, there's no kind of standout soloing going on there at all. Just really interesting music. And it's on the great label, the International Anthem label, but also on None Such as well. It's a joint release of the two. So that's my first record.
Great stuff.
Should I go, John?
You go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm now going to show a new record as well. That's the thread. So this is a beautiful gatefold vinyl double album released by Moses Sumney, and this is his second album. His first album came out I think about 3 years ago. It was called Aromanticism, and this one is called Grey, Grae. And Moses Sumney is one of these artists who it's really hard to categorize, which I love. He's got an incredible voice with a just astonishing range, and he can go really, really high falsetto, really deep, very, very expressive. And this double album is, again, you know, there isn't a musical genre that it fits. He's collaborating with people like Shabaka Hutchins and Thundercat, loads of interesting instrumentation. Some of it's electronic, some of it's very acoustic, really lovely production, beautiful. I mean, it's got kind of 2 booklets. You know, the inner sleeves are kind of gorgeous. It's, you know, it's one of those records where, you know, if you don't buy the vinyl, you're really missing out. But, yeah, highly recommended. I'm still kind of getting to grips with it, but a lot of depth and a lot of beauty. And that's
so I bought the CD.
Oh, you bought the CD?
I need to buy the vinyl, but the very last track is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's stunning. Yeah, and there's a white and a black vinyl as well. Yeah.
Well, what label is that on?
It's Jaguar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. JAG 34 is the. Yeah, I think you'd like it, Rodger.
Yeah,
it sounds interesting. You guys have great taste in soul music, which we'll get to.
It's not necessarily soul. It's weird. It's something.
Well, it's new, right? It's
yeah. It's definitely. It's not really R&B. I don't know how to describe it. It's just really, beautiful music. I
need to check it out. Well, okay, this I guess is not going to surprise any of you, and it's a new record also, and it's on the International Anthem label. And I've raved about this record before. This record was supposed to come out, and I guess it did come out, but it was supposed to come out the day Grammys had to shut their doors, and it was right when in Tennessee it was shutting down, and it was like it came up, but like you couldn't get it. You know, you could mail order it and stuff. But but anyway, this is the Irreversible Entanglements. That's the name of the band, and Who Sent You is the name of the album on International Anthem with Kamai Ayewa on. I'm not pronouncing her name right, but on voice. Anyway, this record has come out at just the right time. I mean, this is like the soundtrack to now, to like what's going on here in the States and all over the world. The first side, you know, some people don't want to be hectored, you know, they don't want a black woman like telling them what's what, you know, but you know what, I think people need to, you know, and there's those that don't want it and need it the worst. And she's telling you what's what. But it's poetry. It's not like, oh, you know, kill Whitey or whatever. It's like, it's, you know, and it's not hip hop, and it's not like coming from that world so much. It's like free jazz, energetic, free jazz, but with a modern, it's not like aping old music. It's trying to sound now, and she's doing this poetry, this strident poetry on top of it. That's just, it raises the hair on the back of my neck. And
Wow.
And I don't generally listen to music over and over again. I'm not really sure why. Like, could be, I guess, because generally I can put a record on and go, okay, that's what happens on that record, and there's really nothing new to be heard. I might enjoy listening to it again, but this I've been playing over and over again, and it strikes me differently every time I hear it. And it's
a good test.
It's freaking great, and I think everybody, not just record nerds and music fans, should hear it.
Oh, I'm going old school now. And Wayne Shorter, sadly, is not playing anymore, but he's still writing music, also posting a lot on Facebook, which is going. He reminded everybody that the track Free for All off this Art Blakey record, which is by far my favorite Art Blakey record, absolutely stormy. Talk about hair standing on the back of your neck. This one is a full-on record. But he reminded everybody that Free for All, which is the title track, was written 3 days after Medgar Evers' trial in the States, which was a big moment in the civil rights movement as well. And this is just a great album. I mean, everyone should have this. I think it's a lot of people's favorite Blue Note album, and I think it's definitely one of mine. Fantastic band: Freddie Hubbard, Curtis Fuller, Wayne Shorter, Cedar Walton, Reggie Workman, and Art Blakey.
Wow.
This is a brand new record for me, although it's an old record. This is Shirdi Scott, who's a Hammond organ player. And this originally was on Strata East, and it's just been re-released on Giles Peterson, the UK DJ, as well as his Brownswood Records. He has another label called Arc Records, which is specifically about re-releasing very hard to find music. And this is it's just basically a trio: Shirdi Scott on the organ, Harold Vick on the tenor sax, and Billy Higgins on the drums. And I do a radio show a couple of times a week, and I played a track from this on Thursday, and suddenly I was getting all of these questions. What is this? Who is this? This is amazing. And I've never heard this before. It's so dynamic, and it's very sort of sensitive, and it's just great to listen to, and just a really nice tonic for now. And apparently this was her first sort of real solo album. She'd played with loads of other people. But yeah.
She went on to Atlantic after that, I think, didn't she?
Right.
And she's Mrs. Stanley Torrington.
Oh, is she?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I have a couple of her records on Impulse.
Right.
They're quite nice. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to sort of cheat here for a second. Everybody knows this record, Bitches Brew. And I have the Mo-Fi copy of the original mix that it sounds really phenomenal. But I went back to this, the complete Bitches Brew box set, and I hadn't listened to this in a while. And this is the Mark Wilder remix of Bitches Brew. Now, Bitches Brew, the original mix of Bitches Brew has a real vibe to it, real murky, but diffuse sound. Now the Mo-Fi pressing really cleans it up quite a bit, but Mark Wilder brings out every detail of every instrument in this very dense stew of 3 keyboards going at once, 2 basses, 3 drummers, you know. And it was like, wow, this really sounds good.
Yeah.
And I think the CD that you can get now of Bitches Brew is the Mark Wilder remix. And while, you know, I don't necessarily recommend remixes of things, it's really nice. And then having all the rest of this material too, that had come out on like Directions and some of those weird comps in the 70s. It's all great stuff. And really,
great. Those
great
boxes, those boxes, the other one in that series I really like is the Jack Johnson one, which is extraordinary. Got an amazing range of stuff on there. And I agree with you, it does sound great, that CD. I played it myself a few weeks ago as well. And it just, yeah, sounded really good.
When you say remix, is it actually reimagined, or is it just kind of sounding better?
He reconstructed it, I think, didn't he? He did some incredibly complex, weird job on it, didn't he? Actually, it wasn't even a straightforward remix. I mean, it was basically, I think they had to almost reconstruct the whole record from bits and pieces. Yeah.
And it's an example of how computers have revolutionized music making, because he could do it, you know, the original record, Tio did all this tape splicing stuff. Well, they weren't going to go at these tapes, so they could put it in a computer in high resolution and recreate those edits on the computer, you know, non-destructively. And it's brilliant. It's just, you don't listen to it and go, oh, this sounds so weird or different. It's just like a veil has been lifted.
It's got a huge sound stage as well. It's got a really massive kind of sound to it as well. Really
do you know the Pantalassa album, the Bill Laswell? Yeah, that's really.
I used to be a huge Bill Laswell nut. I mean, for a while I tried to keep up with his discography, and then I had to give up.
His new one is very, very good.
Is it?
Yeah, I've only got it as a download, but it's really, really good. Actually, it's got a really interesting band. He's back on again, I think. Actually.
Yeah, well, he had kind of a health scare, didn't he? And
spinal meningitis, which sounds absolutely horrible.
Wow.
Okay. There's been a lot of British jazz around on the VC recently. A lot of people featuring this kind of. I pulled this one out because most of the jazz that people have been talking about is coming from the more post-bop kind of end of things, rather than, I came into British jazz much more through the kind of free stuff, but this album's kind of like halfway between the two, really, because it's compositions by TonyOxley, a band featuring Kenny Wheeler, Evan Parker, Derek Bailey, Paul Rutherford, and Barry Guy. A lot of electronics on this album as well. You've got Derek in full electric mode on this record, and also Barry Guy using a lot of pedals with his bass. And TonyOxley's kit is kind of amplified all over the place as well. There's a nice picture of his kit, I think. And this was
a fantastically rare record.
Yeah, I'm not showing off here, but I do have it. And it's a great record, this one. It's never been reissued either, which is but there is I think there's, keep on hearing about plans of reissuing it at some point or other, but it's a great band, almost like the SME, which a lot of people have been talking about recently as well, but with a different drummer, obviously, with TonyOxley, and kind of very different sound to SME, much fuller, much more dynamic, I guess, in the traditional sense, although SME as well. So anyway, TonyOxley, Ichnos,
nice.
On RCA. Can you imagine a record like this coming out on BMG now or something?
And didn't TonyOxley make a record on Columbia? That's also
two on Columbia.
Yeah, this is what I love about you guys. Is like, you'll show super common records, you'll show like, you know, incredibly rare records, but never once will you say, this is incredibly rare, and aren't I cool that I have this rare record?
Well, I guess this probably kind of sits a little bit with both. This is Larry Young, and this is his first solo album. Once he'd left Tony Williams' Lifetime. This is a very dense record. It's called Lawrence of Newark, and it's very much got the kind of fug of Bitches Brew around it. And people were saying that Larry Young was like the John Coltrane of the organ, but I think he's a bit more like the Jimi Hendrix. He really is going to town with the effects on this album. It's an intense listen, and it's almost like the polar opposite of the Moses Sumney. I mean, this is, if you just really want to, you know, feel how messed up the world is, this kind of really is this is very complimentary. that kind of vibe. There's a lot of rhythm going on. There's James Blood Ulmer on the guitar and Abdul Shahid on the drums. Yeah, and
is that the one with Pharaoh's on it, but under another name?
Pharaoh is on it under another name. Yes, he is the guest sax player. Yeah, he's just the mystery guest. He's called the mystery guest on this. Yeah, kind of interesting to sort of see his journey. I mean, an amazing journey Larry Young went on. Yeah.
Wow, that's a record that's been on my want list for a while. Is that an original or a reissue?
I think this is a reissue. I'm sure this is a reissue. Yeah,
the original is very, very rare. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Yeah. Well, speaking of not rare records, common records, and so John showed Ancient Dynasty on the show with Anders. Joanne Brackeen, this is keyed in. Yes, there you go. Yes, this is a $4 record all day long. And yeah, it's on Bob James's record. In fact, it looks like a Bob James record. If you don't look at it closely, you're going to think it's a Bob James record. And it's about as far from a Bob James record as you can get. And it's just a trio with her and Eddie Gomez and Jack DeJohnette playing all original tunes. And it just smokes. She is incredible. She's
amazing, isn't she? Yeah, absolutely amazing.
And yeah, she references McCoy Tyner is probably the closest, but she goes way beyond anything McCoy Tyner did in terms of like taking it out. And you know, she comes close, tiptoes close to the edge of like Cecil Taylorism sometimes, but doesn't quite go quite over to the atonal side. But she's brilliant and unsung, I think, you know. And these records are cheap and they sound great. Another thing I like about these records is that it's recorded in a real studio, like the power plant or something, and nice mastering. It sounds like a record and not like a, you know, some of her earlier records on Inner City are great, but the sound is meh, you know. Highly recommended.
She sounds like she could actually play almost anything. I mean, she just sounds like she's got such facility. Right, I'm gonna turn left now. Gonna go for this. Now, I don't know if anyone's been watching. Questlove's been doing kind of these massive kind of print sessions on YouTube and on his own site as well. And there's a track which I heard years and years ago, which I've been trying to find, and I kind of thought I had it, and I was looking around for it. In fact, it's not a Prince track at all. It's a Maserati track. Maserati were one of his spin-off bands, the band he put together to replace The Time. And there's a track called I Guess It's All Over. Just check that track out on YouTube. It's absolutely fantastic. Huge bass line. And that hair, and this is a real hair. We've got kind of Jerry curls, mullets, everything under the sun as well. But the bass player is meant to be the guy who's never appeared on any other record. I can't believe it's actually him. It's got to be either Prince or Mark Brown, who's the Prince bass player. This is a great record, actually. It's got some good stuff on it. It's kind of, as always with the kind of Prince spin-offs around this time, this was 1982, I think, 1986. There's some great stuff and lots of good stuff. But there's some good things on here as well. So, Maserati.
Well, I've got a little bit of a connection because this also has a Prince connection. This is Madhouse. So there were two albums. There was 8 and was it 12? I think
16
or 16. And these were albums where it's basically Prince and Eric leads. Eric leads on the sax and Prince playing everything else. And I think it was around the time of The Family. And yeah, I can't, you know, Prince was juggling so many different artists and his output was just astonishing. But it's kind of extraordinary, his versatility. His bass playing is absolutely phenomenal on this. It's basically a jazz funk record. And the tracks are just numbered 1 to 8. And I was listening to it this morning and it's just great. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have known it was Prince. And his guitar is fairly invisible, actually. It's a lot about the bass, the drums, the sax and the keys. Yeah, really nice.
16's good as well, actually, the second one.
All instrumental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a third one, which never came out, I think. There was 32, I think.
Oh, really?
Or 24 or something.
Wow. Okay. Well, no Prince, but there's a connection to you guys here, and I'm going to show two real quickly here.
Oh,
Bobby Womack. Now, I have you guys to thank for hipping me to Bobby Womack, and a lot of soul music that I'm familiar with, but it's so hard to find in decent condition. I mean, you know, those Ohio Players records are not uncommon, but they're always trashed. So, but for some reason, Bobby Womack records are a little bit easier to find not trashed. So maybe it's his sort of sordid history. It maybe doesn't quite have the cachet that anyway, so The Prophet, this is from 1981, I believe. But this is what I want to talk about is The Prophet 2, with this horrible cover. Sorry about
really
that.
horrible.
That suit is made out of the same material as this sofa, which is really kind of a nice touch, I think. I really like a suit and sofa combo like that. But this record is so much better than the cover would lead you to.
Oh yeah.
So this is the Poet 2. What did I call this? The Prophet, the Poet 2, featuring Patti LaBelle. Now, despite some sort of dated production, this is sort of like 1984, this is a really strong record. And, you know, his voice, he could sing the phone book as far as I'm concerned, and I'd happily listen, you know. So, like, but to call yourself the poet, that's pretty audacious, you know. But he lives up to it, you know, like even when he's mostly just talking about love and lost love and this, it's not just a superficial pop music kind of take on things. There's a lot of complexity under the surface of this music. And anyway, I buy them when I see them, and I've never bought a bad Bobby Womack record. So even into the 80s, I guess the connection here is the 80s.
Yeah. So before I knew John, we discovered that we'd been to the same Bobby Womack gig at Hammersmith Odeon in I think in about 1984, probably.
Yeah, it's around the same time as that album, wasn't it? Yeah.
Really?
And I'd been to a matinee, and I was so blown away. He had a backing singer called Altrina Grayson, who was about 17 or 18, who I guess they couldn't get Patti LaBelle, who was astonishing. But I'd never experienced soul music in that way, you know, that was so raw, but also kind of so well played. And I knew he was doing another gig that evening, and I actually hid in the loos at the Hammersmith Odeon, and then basically the stewards came and found me and turfed me out. But as I was being turfed out, this guy just handed me 2 tickets. You know, I can't come. Do you want 2 tickets? So I went again with my girlfriend, and to make it even better, Stevie Wonder was in the audience and was called up on stage. And
oh wow!
I mean, it was just, and it was free.
Wow.
But after that, to see Bobby Womack twice in one day, I really needed to lie down after that. That was just,
what was his band like?
Sorry?
That concert was amazing. Like? You talk about kind of hair standing on your hair standing on end and never went down again.
But it was standing on end, but also kind of weeping. You know, when you're just emotionally touched. It was. There's something about his voice. You know, it's just there's so much truth. You know, there's no.
A lot of life in there, I think, isn't there as well?
Yeah. That was amazing.
Okay, getting some really good covers out today. This is what we're called in the UK the Detroit Spinners, but of course called in America just the Spinners. And Lee Sklar, the bass player, who's played on just about everybody's records, has been doing these great videos on YouTube. I mean, I've not been able to keep up with them. There's so many of them. But on one of them, he just talks about the bass player Bob Babbitt and just saying what a fantastic player he is. And there's a track on here called The Rubber Band Man, which has got an amazing kind of bass line on it. And he just basically plays along with it on the video. It's really good fun to watch. But this has got it's got one of our favorites, Felipe Wynn, the singer on it as well. It's the last record they made with Tom Bell. And he's just starting to do the kind of vocal improvisations that he was doing later on with Funkadelic and Knee Deep and stuff. So it's kind of almost feels like a kind of transitional record here. But you know, it's a solid Spinners record. But the Rubber Band Man track is fantastic on it with a great kind of bass line in it. This cost me about 10 pence or something.
Not an album I buy on the strength of the cover.
No, that's right.
It looks like a children's record.
Now this, I have to thank John actually for turning me on to this record. This is the Dells, and you know, as significant a title as it was when it came out, probably in the early 70s, Freedom Means, and there's a track on here called Free and Easy. So John still, like, you know, we've known each other for 20 plus years. It started off as cassette mixtape, and now it's CDs, and I've got kind of books of CDs that John's given me that are all super eclectic, but that's where I first heard this track, and the album is absolutely beautiful. It's another Charles Stepney production, so really lush and imaginative orchestration, deeply soulful and heartfelt music, and again, very timely for now, unfortunately. It feels relevant now as it did when it came out.
Most of the tracks written by Terry Callier, I think.
Yes.
Well, the connection here would be, this is very timely as well. And I'm gonna cheat again, but I see these as the same record. Listen to this last night, actually, and this is Kendrick Lamar's, right? Damn, which won the Pulitzer Prize back in 2018 or whatever when it came out. That was hugely controversial. And then I guess people had made mixes of it where they played the record backwards in reverse order of tracks. And that was sort of circulating around, and then so the label put it out officially. So it's Damn, and then it starts from the last track and goes back to the beginning of this. And we listened to them both in a row last night, and it was really, really interesting because, you know, I am no hip hop connoisseur, although my history with hip hop goes all the way back to, you know, the early 80s. Even though we just heard these same tracks moments before, coming after the song that on this came, hearing it in reverse order, it changed the whole perspective of the songs. And then you notice that the last line of the regular version is "I went for a walk," and then it comes back again at the end of the first track. It's like, oh my God, it's almost like he planned it out that way, you know. Anyway, I don't know shit about hip hop, but this is brilliant, and this is just genius. You know, incredible stuff.
He's the real thing, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And the production on this put me off because To Pimp a Butterfly had much more like musical stuff going on, with horns and stuff. And this is very stripped down, much more like just beats and voice, but still really musical and compelling musically.
Okay, penultimate record. This was a birthday present. And Laura Nero, which is Eli and the, was it 13th Confession, which is just a great record. I mean, I had a battered old copy of this as well. It's very nice to get a new, this is a music on vinyl reissue, which sounds fine. Actually sounds really, really good. Just a great artist. I think kind of still underrated, I think. I mean, hugely influential on a whole load of people. Miles was obsessed with Miles actually asked to play on her album and she wouldn't let it. Which is kind of, I think, kind of shows how confident she was in, I mean, just really good. I mean, great orchestration, fantastic songs, really unusual kind of structure to the songs as well. I mean, she's up there. She's a great singer, I think. And this was her third album, I think, actually, second album. And there's a whole run of them, which is just really, really good. So, Laura Nero, always a good listen.
Well, this is a pretty controversial cover. I should say there is actually somebody hanging upside down in the meat rack here. This is the Edgar Band. Yes. This is a band who there's a small group of artists who were around in the late 60s into the early 70s who really were the kind of true underground in the UK, and they were all about, you know, playing for free festivals. They kind of really meant what they were saying, and they were kind of sort of revolutionaries, really, alongside the Pink Fairies would probably fit into that category, the Deviants, maybe the Groundhogs a bit. This is, I think, the third Edgar Broughton Band album, and it was recorded at Abbey Road, and it was produced by Jeff Wayne, you know, who did War of the Worlds. And it's, I don't think it's I mean, obviously I wasn't old enough to sort of see these guys at their peak, although I did see them in the, I think, mid 80s. And they also, you know, there's a guy called Lewis Taylor who John and I often go on about, who's this amazing sort of psychedelic soul artist. He did play guitar for Edgar Broughton in the late 80s, I think. But yeah, there's a book which will make sense of why I'm showing this. But yeah, it just arrived a couple of days ago, and hard to categorize. Very good songs and just really nice orchestration. And there's a really, again, John will probably remember these backing singers called the Ladybirds, who used to appear in sort of MOR music shows in the early 70s, and they're doing backing vocals on this album, which again is really weird. So yeah,
it's an interesting time for me. When I was at school, I had a pencil box. We had it with pencils and pens in, and I had "Al Demons Out" written on it, which was their big, which was their kind of slogan, basically.
They were very influenced by the Fugs and Captain Beefheart.
Yeah, it was kind of.
Did you say penultimate? So we have 2 more to show. Is that right?
You've got 2 more, Rodger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Let's go with this. I brought a few extra because I didn't know. I thought anyway. This is a total left turn. This is Skip Spence.
Not that left turn, actually.
No.
And Oregon.
Yeah.
This is a Modern Harmonic 3 LP reissue of basically the Sunday CD that kind of compiles all the music he recorded here in Nashville in 1968. You know, I was talking about this record with my wife, and she had never heard it before, so I put it on and we were listening to it. And I was like, oh, well, there's a reason why the originals are so rare. It's a really weird record. Like, it's really hard to like, because honestly, it's the sound of mental illness, to be honest. You know, there's some really interesting music on it, and he's basically playing all the instruments. So it has this very shambolic, almost like proto lo-fi kind of vibe to it. But it's 1968, and it's just this a cry for help. I don't know, but it's really powerful listening. And interesting alternate takes. You know, it's very loose, very loosey-goosey what it's up to here. And nice liner notes in here, and you know, forget originals. You know, this is the way to go.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So yeah, interesting. You know, one of the more interesting things to come out of Nashville, Tennessee, to be honest.
Yeah. I think he was kind of big influence on a lot of. I mean, there was somebody did an album, compiled an album of tribute stuff to him a few years ago, didn't they? Actually, and it was interesting. Loads and loads of people made really interesting versions. Tom Waits and people like that. Kind of, he was also a big influence, I think. It's a bit. He reminds me, but he's almost like the American Syd Barrett in a way, I think.
Yeah. And then he just kind of disappeared, right? I mean, he only died relatively recently. But
okay, now my one and only CD of the evening, and this I have to thank Richard Williams, a writer who UK music writer who had a blog called The Blue Moment, and he talked about this. This is Ronald Isley and Burt Bacharach together. And I don't know why I never picked this up when it came out, this record at all, actually. Horrible cover, actually. Really just doesn't look like it's going to be, but it's an absolutely beautiful record. I mean, it's basically Ronald Isley singing Burt Bacharach songs live with a 40-piece orchestra. Fantastic band. I mean, it sounds like it wasn't recorded in Columbia Studio 2, but it could have been. Actually, it's got that same kind of sound to it. And absolutely wonderful. I mean, his voice is incredible, considering how old he is. And there's a version of Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, which is, I think, probably my least favorite Bacharach song, which he absolutely slows right down and turns into this absolute epic version of it. Just beautiful singing, actually. Always reminds me of what Luther Vandross did with A House Is Not a Home back in the day. Just a great record, this, actually. And really good playing. Vinnie Colaiuta and Harvey Mason, all kinds of really good musicians on here, and you know, proper 40-piece orchestra as well. Wow. Good stuff. So thanks to Richard Williams for this. And it's called Isley Presents Bacharach. which is kind of.
Well, I guess the connection with that is the orchestration. You probably know, Rodger, that, well, John and I are both big Barry White fans. We've gone from Edgar Broughton to Barry White, actually.
Absolutely, yeah.
This was from 1979. So this was, Barry White had changed record label, and he was no longer with Gene Page, the arranger. And I have to say, I wouldn't have, again, this is not an album you'd be picking up on the strength of its cover. But actually, it's great. And the first track almost sounds like a Fela Kuti track. It took me completely by surprise. It's got this amazing kind of cowbell pattern going on, almost kind of Afrobeat. But it still has that beautiful warmth of Barry's voice. And he, you know, in his own way, he was like a James Brown, because he would just, he would lock into a groove. And it becomes incredibly hypnotic. You know, different kinds of tempos, but yeah, really nice album. Do you know this one, John?
No, I don't know at all.
Yeah, so it's The Message is Love, which is my message to all of us.
Yes,
it is. Right. The message is love. We mustn't forget that. All right, Rodger.
All right. Well, I guess the only connection here is that this is positive, happy sounding music. The latest thing on Analog Africa. This is Neal. This is one of their limited edition dance things. So this won't stay in print if you're interested in this. Neal is the name of the band, and I can't pronounce that. I think it's Portuguese. Something about Tropicalian conjunto music. So this is conjunto music from Peru, of all places. And it is so good. Again, this is a record that has seen a lot of time on my turntable, just because it's just so, it's mostly instrumental. There's a few vocal tracks on the B-side, but it's mostly instrumental. These floating grooves that just want to go on forever. And it just, you know, it's very hard to be depressed when this is, and so this has been a real popular thing. As with just about everything on this label, I've attempted to collect it all. I think this guy, Sami Ben Rajib, you know, is doing, you know, the world a service in getting this music out there and expanding beyond Africa now into, you know, Brazil, but still the African diaspora. You know, it's fascinating, wonderful stuff. Can't recommend it highly enough.
I'm almost scared to go there with Analog Africa. There's so many. I mean, it's such a beautifully curated label. Gorgeous stuff.
I want them all.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem. That's why I haven't gone there too much, actually. I can see myself getting dragged into buying all of them. Okay, some books. Two very quick books. This is a great book. I mean, I have to say, hard bop is not my favorite era of jazz, but this is a little book. It's only about 200 pages long, written by a guy called David Rosenthal. And it's a it's one of the best jazz books I've ever read. You can read it in a day, basically, the whole thing. And it absolutely is a brilliant kind of analysis of hard bop, actually, and just kind of puts the whole thing in context, talks about the artist, and gets it all over with in like a really short, it's less than 200 pages long, the book. Really highly recommended. Oxford University Press. I think I've got this for about 50 pence somewhere in a charity shop. And the other thing is that just on the UK jazz thing again, is that if people want to really dig in and find out probably even more than you need to know UK jazz, this is the book actually. It's called Innovations in British Jazz, Volume 1, 1960 to 1980 by a guy called John Wicks. And it's actually still available from the publisher, which is called Soundworld. And it just talks about the relationship between the jazz scene, bands like King Crimson, Soft Machine, all that kind of stuff. Talks about the whole, you get a kind of map of the whole scene, really, what was going on at the time. And really just virtually mentions every single gig and every record that happened during that time. So that's the opposite of the thing. It's pretty thick.
You gave it to me for a Christmas present. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, my book is, check out the cover on that. Now, this is called 100 Unhip Albums. Now, I don't know, Rodger, in the States, whether you, basically, as I was growing up, if you went to Woolworths, which I guess is like Walmart, there'd be these albums that would be really cheap. And you'd look and you'd see down here, it would be all the kind of the tunes that were in the charts. And you think, wow, this is brilliant, you know, all for £1. and then you'd take it home and it would all be like really weird versions that didn't sound anything like the versions that you were used to, like really kind of naff poor ones. Anyway, he's running with this. This is a guy called Ian Moss. It's you know, I would never buy this book on the strength of that cover, but actually he's a really good writer, and he's alerting me to music I've already got that I haven't listened to for ages, and also music that I just would never think of buying. So I've just bought a David Essex album that I would never have bought, that's actually brilliant. And the Edgar Broughton and the Larry Young, which I already had, were both in this book, and it just got me listening to it again. So there's 100 albums. It goes all over the place. It's a great read just for picking up. Yeah.
I quite like that cover, actually. So, well, when I'm not immersing myself in Railroadiana, I've been dipping my toe into this sort of massive book that I got from Amazon, I don't know, several months ago. This is Audio Culture Readings in Modern Music, edited by Christoph Cox and Daniel Warner. This is a 2017 revised edition on Bloomsbury, academic. Talk about a big book. So what this is, oh, I hate that construction. This is a collection of essays designed to be a textbook for like graduate level, you know, audio culture, sound design, you know, sort of academic discussions of music and stuff. So it has a lot of great stuff in here, like, you know, a bunch of things by John Cage, of course, but Brian Eno and Henry Cowell and Pauline Oliveros and on and on and on. Very interesting stuff. So a lot of key things, you know, you may want to read all of the Art of Noise, the Futurist Manifesto, but there's enough here to kind of, you get the gist of it, and a nice bibliography. My only quibble with this book is that while Theodore Adorno is referenced a lot, he does not get an essay. Maybe that's because he's so unrelentingly negative, people just don't want to deal with him. So, but anyway, this is highly recommended to have on your shelf. It's not something you're going to sit and read front to back, but if you're like, oh, someone references that on ambient music, you know, essay by Brian Eno, it's in here, along with lots of other key texts that might be of interest to music nerds.
That's good. Yeah.
Nice. Wow. Well, I think we've reached the end of the video.
Oh, no film?
Oh
yeah.
I haven't got a film, but if you guys have got a film, then share your.
Can I just show this? It's not a film, but as comfort.
Yeah.
We've been, Liz and I have been going back to our childhood, and we watched all of the Rockford Files, and now we're going through all of the Columbos.
Oh, I love Columbo.
And it's just classic, you know. Yeah. After dinner, we allow ourselves an hour or so of television, and then we go to bed. There's a very funny post from the sound artist Vicky Bennett, who's also known as People Like Us. A couple of days ago, she's obviously suffering a bit, like everybody in lockdown. Has put so many filters on her Facebook account now, filtering stuff out, and all she's getting are pictures of Jim Rockford and cats. Oh, I need to learn how to filter my Facebook.
That's right. So that's it. That's basically all she's getting now. But yeah, I mean, I kind of just, if you want to really freak yourself out, actually, is that David Lynch's channel has been really good fun to look at. He's just done a re-edit of his little short 15-minute film called Rabbits, which is really quite disturbing, actually. Wow. Which is, it was included as part of, originally in the middle of Inland Empire, but it's just a very, very weird little 15 minutes. But it's and also his daily weather reports from LA was fantastic. I just love them, actually. I just wish they were in the morning here and not in halfway through the afternoon. Yeah. That's my idea.
I don't know, what have I been? I've been watching Parks and Recreation.
Oh, that's
which is a comedy, which my daughter's been suggesting, which actually is just great. It's got Quincy Jones's daughter in it. And I guess
Joe Biden makes an appearance.
Yeah. Oh, does he?
Yeah, oh, he does, yes.
Oh, right.
You know, she's really fixated
with him.
Wow.
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, it's some light viewing. It's nice. It's only half an hour an episode, and it's just just takes you a bit away from the relentless oddness of our times. But yeah, Rodger, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor and a pleasure, and
That's it.
it's a shame.
I hope you guys can get back to normal soon.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice if we were actually able to play each other the tracks, but it's been great about music.
We'll have to do.
I'm going to end the video, and we can carry on. We can carry on chatting, but we'll see everybody very soon.
Yeah.
See you later.
Cheers.